Yes, and welcome in to One on One, New York's longest running sports call-in show.
Coming live from the Bronx, this show is part of New York's history. Students have been producing it at Fordham University since 1974. These are just some of the students who have been drawn to Fordham for decades, specifically to work at WFUV, the campus radio station. It's a station where some of the nation's top journalists and sports broadcasters were trained. But WFUV is known nationally not just as a training ground for Fordham students, but for its music. It's one of the most popular adult alternative music stations in America. It can be heard on the radio at 90.7 FM and digitally streamed on the internet. The station is professionally run, but students take part in all factors of WFUV's operations.
President Donald Trump is preparing for tomorrow's 4th of July celebration.
More than 150 students are currently working in the music, sports, and news departments, giving them a taste of broadcasting.
I'm Chuck Singleton. I'm the general manager at WFUV.
Chuck Singleton, who's been the WFUV's chief executive since 2012, says the station tries hard to please its audience while serving the university.
There are two components to what we do. So one is programming, primarily in the form of music discovery, which is something that we are known for within New York and the New York Metro, and also across the United States. And there are other programming components as well. Local sportscasting and news coverage are two of those. And then on the other side, what you might describe as more of an internal portion of the mission, which is preparing the next generation of media professionals.
Singleton says that he loves the students' contribution to the radio station.
The constant infusion of energy and ideas that we get from students across the station who come from all sorts of different backgrounds and have different interests and different experience, come to the station, and as many as 70 to 85 students in paid internships every year, and about 150 that we train station-wide in a year. They make terrific contributions to the station. They keep us all young.
Jack White was pretty peeved.
WFUV Midday host Alisa was one of those young people when she first came to work at the station. She says the combination of professional staff and student workers makes WFUV special.
So we've got students who are just learning about broadcasting. They're just learning about doing news, journalism, sports, and they're just getting right on the air. And it's kind of like a trial by fire. You learn by doing. I mean, it's one thing to, study things and, write papers. And I think there's a great value in that. But I think you really learn by doing. And it's a fantastic opportunity.
I am Alisa here on WFUV this Tuesday morning with new music.
Ali, who has been working at the station for 15 years, enrolled at Fordham just to have a chance to work at WFUV. She says her job entails playing music and sharing insights.
I try to be pretty knowledgeable about what I'm playing and keep our listeners up to date on any tour dates or information about upcoming albums that our artists are putting out or whether they're coming to town. So I usually like to put in some fun little stories about what's happening and, interject things that our listeners might be interested in.
There's a great new song from Brittany Howard.
Before being a WFUV radio host, Ali earned a bachelor's degree in communications at Fordham and worked in finance. She says she gained interest in WFUV when listening to it on the radio.
It just hit me like all of a sudden. I was like, I love this radio station. And we were running an interview at the time, and I was like, man, can you believe this is a job that this person just gets to interview musicians and listen to music and play music all the time?
Ali not only serves as a DJ, but also interviews many of the musical acts who come by the station for visits.
Hello.
The station books up-and-coming artists and established stars, including Adele and Lana Del Rey. Ali says that hosting musical performers at the station live is impactful for the students as well as the audience.
Our video students also, we've got engineers who learn video skills. They're videotaping bands and editing bands that, are pretty big bands, and they would generally not have that opportunity.
WFUV music director Russ Boris says this station is known for music discovery. When you hear music discovery, what goes through your mind?
you're trying to turn people on to the music they need to hear. New artists, I think a lot of times what happens now is that listeners who aren't necessarily familiar with what WFUV does might think, hey, there's not as much cool new music out there as there used to be. They might have grown up at a different time or a different era of radio where they had some, certain expectations for what they were going to hear.
While students assist in the music department, managing thousands of CDs, and helping to host in-house live performances, Boris says these students' contributions are extremely important.
I think FUV just sort of attracts a certain type of person, and I think when you walk around the halls and the studios and the offices of FUV, you get a good sense of what the vibe is here for sure.
But there's a different vibe in the news department than in music, a more serious vibe. Students learn to develop skills in researching and covering the most important stories for the public interest. News director George Bodarky, a Fordham grad himself, has been training his students for more than a decade on how to do newscast and report across New York. He says that some of WV students have gone on to land opportunities at major news organizations like National Public Radio and CBS News.
It's provided a great foundation for young journalists to get some significant training under their belt so they can go on and do this professionally.
Fordham graduate student Valeria Valorier was named as the station's digital producer to create strategic communication plans for the news department. She says WV is about developing the skill sets of student journalists.
They're already so talented at producing radio stories and what makes a good story and asking tough questions. So my role has been, how do you extend the life of a story beyond just its publication?
Valorier says she is amazed by these students' passion for working at WV.
They love that it's an opportunity to work professionally while they're still students, and I think that is a really rare thing anywhere.
With the students gaining awards for the news stories, podcasts, and other aspects of journalism, Bodarky says WV News is a very strong operation.
The students have an opportunity to be on the air and to report just like you would in any other media outlet in New York City.
WFUV student Natalie Migliore has been working at the station since 2016. When arriving at Fordham, she said she didn't know there was a radio station in the basement floor of Keaton Hall. After 3 years of training and reporting, she became a student manager for the news department. Migliore says she has mastered the production process during her WV experience.
So I call my interview subjects, I set up a schedule with them to interview them, and then I have to sort of organize myself because after an interview, then I have to write the story, and then I have to edit the story, and then it goes through a whole editing process with me and my editor, George Bodarky, usually. And then after it gets edited, it sort of has to have a longer life, so you have to sort of figure out how to market it to people, tweet it out, get it on social media, schedule it out. So it's really just been, it's really a beginning to end process that my experience has brought me.
Governor Phil Murphy is expanding New Jersey's medical marijuana program today.
Migliore says her WV experience influenced her to seek more journalism opportunities.
My whole career path has been, really influenced by WFUV and what it's done for me. There's a lot there. It's really been a great experience.
CBS News producer Sara Kugel also built her skills to become a success at the station. She says she benefited greatly from her WV training.
It taught students the value of and importance of writing your own scripts, and it also encouraged us to go out and to find our own stories.
Kugel says the hardest part of working at WV were the long hours and long time it took to build skills. She is one of the many Fordham students who became successful journalists after working at the station. Bodarky says the contribution of students like Kugel to WV News is tremendous.
Year after year after year, they raise the bar themselves because they are consistently doing more work and uncovering more and doing more, and that just sets the tone for the next generation to come through who wants to also raise that bar. So inspiring, I guess, is the word that I would say if I had to choose one word to describe that. It's certainly inspiring.
The Pinstripes are back in action tonight against the White Sox.
Students coming out of the sports department at WV also says it's inspiring because so many of the country's best-known sports broadcasters are products of the station. Many Fordham students joined WV to gain experience in beat reporting, blind play-by-play, and post-game analysis to become a success in sportscasting. The professional broadcasters who came out of FUV have really set that bar high. Some of America's best-known sportscasters and sports analysts started their careers right here in these halls. Some of those sportscasters are icons in New York, like New York Yankees announcer and ESPN host Michael Kay.
That one's drilled deep to right field. It is high. It is far. It is gone.
He worked alongside Mike Breen at Fordham, who now covers several sports, including the NBA, and even hosted the last NBA Finals. Jack Curry also works with Kay at DS Network. Ryan Rucco, one of the younger alums, covers the Nets and has been filling in as Yankees announcer as well. But the most famous alum of the station, and arguably one of the greatest names in sports broadcasting ever, is Vince Scully, who hosted Dodgers baseball for 67 years. WFUV Sports Director Bobby Ciaferdini says WFUV Sports succeeds in giving students real-world experience.
So you have a professional radio station that's a 50,000 watt radio station in New York City that's very popular for its music, very popular for its news, and also very popular because of the sports. But the training component of the radio station really accomplishes a lot, because not only do you have this professional setting and professional radio station that does so much here in the community of the Bronx and New York City, but again, it has this component of the training which allows students at Fordham University to get professional experience.
Ciaferdini says that students have many opportunities to cover sporting events, including New York teams, UFC, and the Indianapolis 500.
So we have beat reporters at all of those games, and a lot of our guests that are on the show are either journalists or retired players, former players, or even current players that play on these teams.
One beat reporter is Fordham student Matt West, who's been covering basketball for the station. He does his work alongside professional journalists from the area, and he is not just doing audio. Like others at WV, his reports are done in multimedia. West says that covering basketball has given them new insights.
It's a privilege because you get a lot of access to players that you normally wouldn't get, especially if you were, say, at a different school, or you just get that professional experience.
I caught up with Wes at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, where he said that covering sports for WV has been a life-changing experience.
My favorite part is the personal, experience you get with the players after the games. You get to interview them, ask them certain questions, things that are in your mind, things that you saw throughout the game. So I just love the, whole interaction of talking to the players.
A central experience for the sports students is working on One-on-One, the station's sports talk show. Fordham students do everything: produce, engineer, host, and book the guests. The show is not only broadcast from the station, but also from remote locations like the NFL Super Bowl, the US Open, and the Baseball Hall of Fame inductions in Cooperstown, New York. The listeners get the students' take on everything happening with the local sports teams.
For the first time since 2012,
Former TV reporter, now WCBS 880 News Radio anchor Mack Rosenberg worked on One-on-One from 2010 to 2014. He says that working the show had many different elements.
If you are hosting and you have produced before, then you know exactly what that producer is going through, and you know exactly what they need to do corresponding to what you need to do to make the show a success.
Rosenberg says he also enrolled at Fordham specifically to work for WV.
I came here knowing that I wanted to be involved in any way, and once I got here and actually got involved, it was really like a family. It became basically a place where I could come to not only do things that I wanted to do, like sports broadcasting and that, but just to hang out and catch up with friends and that kind of thing.
Another key part of the WV sports program is calling the games for the Fordham teams.
One's going back. Now you see it. Now you don't.
Current Yankee TV analyst, ESNetwork.com columnist Jack Curry worked at WV while being a Fordham student studying communications in the 1980s. During a FaceTime interview, he said that 80% of his play-by-play experience at Fordham was doing color commentary.
I think I was good at it. I think I was much better as the analyst. I think I was much better as watching plays unfold and then having the opportunity to talk about it. There is a nuance and a skill and an art to be able to describe beautifully, gorgeously, wonderfully what is going on during a game.
Mind. And so many years later,
while Curry was attending Fordham, he says WV was more focused on Fordham sports than professional ones, but he says that covering both are important.
I think we got our fix, so to speak, of the pro teams by doing the sports talk show one-on-one, which I love to do because that forced you to keep up to date on all sports. I was a kid in college who loved sports, so it wasn't as if you had to force me to do that, but if there was a big game on a Saturday night, I was more likely to watch the game while my friends were going out and hanging out because I knew I might have to talk about that game on one-on-one.
With more opportunities for sports coverage, Ciaferdini says the list of WV students will continue to grow.
Every student will get an opportunity to kind of experience all of the different types of training components that go into becoming a well-rounded broadcaster.
My name's Casey Candela, and I'm the news.
WV may be known as a radio station, but its news and sports students are also now moving into television through the collaboration with Bronxnet, the Bronx community television station. Bronx Connections is a show produced by WFUV that focuses on issues in the Bronx such as gang violence and the impact of legalizing marijuana. There's also a third partner in the collaboration, the Norwood News, the local newspaper that serves the area to the northeast of the Fordham campus.
Welcome back to Open.
Bronxnet Creative Services Director Marissa Wright has a long background in live news and teaches college and high school students how to work in media. She says collaboration with WFUV is important.
The media is being shared with WFUV News, it's with WFUV Radio, the Norwood News, and Bronxnet Television. And the packages are airing on our channels, on the websites for the Norwood News and WFUV, and of course on WFUV Radio.
The kids got to smell all
the collaboration of Bronxnet, Norwood News, and WFUV started in 2018. It allows WFUV students to get experience producing stories that appear in radio, television, and print. A WFUV reporter gets paired with a Bronxnet videographer to go out and interview people around the Bronx community, producing different versions of the same story for each partner. WFUV News Director Bodarky says this collaboration is critically important.
So our collaboration with Norwood News and Bronxnet allows us to get more done, to reach new and diverse audiences as well that might not be the WFUV audience.
When reflecting on her experience with hosting an episode of Bronx Connections, Migliore says the episode focused on food insecurity and access to healthy foods.
We have to give these people a voice, and we have to, understand where people are coming from and what's affecting them.
We are back for an A-10 tournament preview edition of The Ram with Coach Gately and Dom.
The Ram with Coach Gately is the newest show in the Bronxnet WFUV collaboration. The show features interviews with Fordham women's basketball coach Stephanie Gately and her players. Ciaferdini says that while it may be on television instead of radio, the show fits with WFUV's tradition.
By combining what we've been doing here at the radio station and incorporating a professional television station like Bronxnet, we were able to take that Gately show, the Coach Gately show, and really rev it up and have it be a lot better looking, a lot more professional.
Bronxnet Executive Director Michael Max Kanabi says having the Ram with Coach Gately is an exciting thing.
Here in the studio floor, it's not often that we set up a basketball hoop and there's a play that's demonstrated, or that we kind of get inspired by the scholar athletes, because it's a challenge to balance the academics with the athletics, and it's inspiring to us across generations.
After the first season, the Ram with Coach Gately received the Outstanding Sportscast Award for the New York State Broadcasters Association. White says it's always great for a Bronxnet show to receive awards.
The first time we were nominated for a New York Emmy, somebody said to me, "You've already won, whether you get the award or not. It's just the recognition. The nomination means that the industry is recognizing your work."
With so many WFUV alums receiving recognition for their professional work, some current students say they feel nervous about living up to the station's high standards. But the station's alums like Curry have plenty of advice for the current students and those yet to come.
Writing and broadcasting are the same things. You want to be a better writer, sit down and write every day. You want to be a better broadcaster, even if it means grabbing a hairbrush and staring in the mirror, work on your diction, work on your language, make sure that you're not saying or or like, because those are things that are going to cause people to say, wow, this person still needs a little bit of work.
Kugel says that Fordham students should enjoy every minute of working at WFUV.
Starting to push yourself to think outside the norm, pushing yourself to think creatively is so important to get into your system early on, because that will only benefit them later on in their journalism careers.
In a room filled with current and future stars, WV's work to bring music to the world and train the next generation of broadcasters goes on. From Fordham University in the Bronx, this is Rafique Louison.